everyone! If you're new here, my name is Crystal, also known as The.Book.Gypsy on Instagram, and today I'm going to be wrapping up my summer reading. I want to show you guys all the books that I read from June, July, and August of this year in anticipation for the fall and the starting of a new season. I am so excited. If you haven't noticed, I already have my pumpkins on my shelf. And yeah, so let's just get into it. Broken down books by genre, ebook, audiobook, all that stuff. I haven't broken it down like how many books that I read in that aspect. I'll show you all the books that I read this summer, and let me know if you guys have read any of these this summer as well. You guys know I did Booktubeathon, so a lot of these books are from Booktubeathon, but also a lot of them I have read on my own in the summer, and I am very surprised at myself that there are like no thrillers in these piles. It's just crazy. Every summer I tend to go for thrillers and read thrillers, but the ones that I have picked up this year just didn't do it for me. I just feel like thrillers this year are just getting outplayed, or they're just the same type of story, just with different characters in a different setting. So thrillers didn't really do it for me this summer. I do have a lot of other books here, mostly YA. I did read a lot of YA this summer, so I want to show you what I've read. So starting off with June, The Outsider by Stephen King. This was really good. I was shocked how good it was, especially since it's been, you know, a long time since we got something that was similar to Stephen King's old style of writing. So this was really good. I highly recommend this book. This was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. It looks really big, but it's only like 500 pages, I think. 560, so it's really not, it looks bigger than what it is. It was an easy read. It was so good. I wanted to keep reading it. I couldn't stop reading it. I even tabbed it. There were so many things in this that I loved. I didn't read the Mr. Mercedes series, and I know a lot of people felt like there were spoilers in this book for it, and there definitely are, but I don't think it would stop me from reading the Mr. Mercedes series. Next I had read The Price Guide to the Occult by Leslie Walton. She had written Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender, and a lot of people love that book, and it's definitely, you know, a cherished book to most. But for some reason this book was just not, I had no idea what I was reading, and I know it was about witches, and I picked it up because of that. I also picked it up because the cover is so beautiful. Like, this is a hardback, and it's like soft, and oh, I just love the cover. So this is definitely something that I keep on my shelf. But the story had no substance whatsoever. Unfortunately, I did give this like a 3-star on Goodreads. It just didn't really hold up to the hype for me. It wasn't that good. And I'm really disappointed that it wasn't that good, because I feel like it had so much potential to be good, especially from what I knew about it before going into it. If you want to check it out for yourself, check it out, but yeah, I don't really recommend it. Next book that I read is Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson. You guys all know, if you've been watching my videos, that I loved this book, and I will revisit this book one day soon because I just really loved it. It was so good. 5 out of 5 stars for Undead Girl Gang for sure. If you haven't read it yet, please check it out. You will not be disappointed, especially if you enjoy reading YA and you enjoy reading books about witches. There are some funny aspects in here. I did laugh out loud a little bit. And witchcraft, you'll love this book. I highly recommend it. So this was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. The book that I read was Sadie by Courtney Summers, and this is actually coming out September 4th, so get your copy when it comes out, because this book was a wild ride. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I received it from Wednesday Books, honest review, and I really honestly love this story. This was a thrilling novel. There was definitely tough subjects in here, so if you are triggered easily, I wouldn't recommend it, especially for rape or abuse. But if you want a gripping thriller, Sadie is for you. And it is a YA book, but it has a lot of adult content to it, so it's definitely more mature on the YA side of things. But highly recommend it. 5 out of 5 stars for Sadie. Next book I read and loved is Furyborn, which I lost the dust jacket for this. If you guys watched my previous videos, you know why. But this is one of the best fantasy novels that I've read in a very long time. It was very gripping. It grabbed me from the first chapter. I have nothing else to say about it. If you love fantasy and you want to read like a feminist fantasy where women are in control, read this book. I loved this book. Can't wait for the second one. I hope this turns into a really big series because I want to know what happened to the characters. The next book I read in June is City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab, and I had received this at BookCon. I got an advanced reader copy for this, and the moment that I got it, I read it, and I loved this. Along with all my other Victoria Schwab books that I have read, I just love her books. Everyone knows this. So if you haven't gotten City of Ghosts yet, because this did come out August 28th, I highly recommend it. It is an excellent middle grade book about ghosts and a girl who sees them and who can cross between the living world and the veil, and with her cat and friends. And I really enjoyed this. I can't wait for the second book to come out. I know Victoria is writing it right now or has finished it, and it's in, you know, the works of editing and stuff like that. So I cannot wait for this book, the second book, to come out for this. And I'm going to revisit this once again because I do love Victoria's writing. City of Ghosts, 5 out of 5 stars for me. Next book that I read and finished in June was Strange the Dreamer, which is my favorite book of the year so far. And that's all I have to say. If you haven't read Strange the Dreamer, read it as soon as you can. Laini Taylor's writing is so beautiful in this book, and I can't wait to revisit it. I know a couple girls on Twitter are doing a reread for this in anticipation of Muse of Nightmare, so if anyone would like to join in on the reread at the end of September, I will post the links down below to the Twitter feed and to the links so you can participate in this reread with me. I love Strange the Dreamer. So next, I am going to go over with the books that I read in July. With Beneath the Sugar Sky by Shauna Maguire. I had read this for the Booktubeathon, and I love this story. This was 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. The next book that I read in July is Vicious by V.E. Schwab, and yes, I enjoyed this. Highly enjoyed this, and I cannot wait for Vengeful to come out in October. Is it October or the end of it's the end of September, I think. Not exactly sure, but I am very excited for the second book in this series to come out. Vicious was so good, and anyone who hasn't read it yet, you are missing out on a really good book. Don't be intimidated by it because of the hype, because believe the hype, it is good. It is, especially if you've read any of her other books, this is her best one that she has. This is the best book she's ever written. Please check out Vicious. I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. End of story. So the next book that I read in July is Stephen King, The Stand. I finished this. I started this in March and I finished it for Booktubeathon, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a little too long, but I really enjoyed it. So The Stand by Stephen King, I gave this a, what did I give it? I think I gave it a 4 stars. The next book that I read in July is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I actually did DNF this book with like 100 pages left because I had no idea what I read. So I gave it a 3 stars. I think I'm going to revisit it probably in the winter time, maybe because the setting, it does take place in the winter, so I just feel like maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset for this book. As of right now, it's a 3 out of 5 stars. I'll revisit it soon. Next up that I read in July was The Little Shop of Found Things by Paula Braxton. I did enjoy the first half of this book, and I loved the concept that it was explained to me, but at the end of it, I felt like I read Outlander, and I just hated Outlander so much, and I'm reminiscent of Outlander that I just got bored of it. I received this as an ARC from the publisher, and it does come out October 2nd, so if you are looking for a book similar to Outlander, if you did enjoy the Outlander series, then maybe check this out. You might like it. The next book that I read in July is Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I love this book. It was a reread for me because I haven't read it in so many years, and rereading it now, I have to say that I love it even more. I think because I'm more in my like adult years in life. I really love it. It reminds me of Supernatural. Character in here that reminds me, and his name is Crowley, and he reminds me of Crowley from Supernatural, so that's all I keep picturing in my head when I read this. I really enjoyed this. I think everyone, if you haven't read Good Omens, it's very satirical of an apocalypse and Satan's spawn, so it's really, really good. So if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. These two authors are just geniuses in the fantasy world and supernatural world. I just love what they put out. Highly recommend Good Omens. If you haven't read it yet, it's definitely a great Halloween read, and it's funny. Check it out if you haven't yet. Now I'm going to start with my books from August that I read. It's now August 31st, so I don't think I'm reading any more August books. But these are the books that I read in August, including books from the Booktubeathon as well. I had read Sea Witch by Sarah Henning, and this book I did give a 5 out of 5 stars. I really love this retelling of The Little Mermaid, and I never thought I would enjoy Little Mermaid retellings, but something about this book, I think the atmosphere that was created, and I really enjoyed the characters. They were not unlikable characters, and I felt like I could relate to them. I really, really enjoyed this retelling of The Little Mermaid, and I know there are so many of them out there right now, but if you haven't read any yet, please start with this one, because I don't think you're going to want to read any other ones if you read this one first. And then another book that I read for Booktubeathon that I finished in August was Meddling Kids by Edgar Quintero. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. There was a lot of plot holes and some things missing, but it was a really fun book to read, and it definitely reminded me of the Scooby-Doo gang a little bit, especially because there's a dog in the book. I enjoyed Meddling Kids, and I think you will too, especially if you're an 80s or 90s kid. I think this is the book that will kind of give you all the feels. Definitely check this out if you haven't yet. 4 out of 5 stars. The book that I finished in August was Campfire by Sean Sarles. It was okay. The book was portrayed to me as like an R.L. Stine type book, and it is. It is definitely similar to that. I still feel like R.L. Stine's writing is better, but this is also a debut book for this author. I enjoyed it. It was just silly. It was just a silly book, and I didn't feel scared at all. More of a middle grade book than a YA book to me. It was okay. It was enjoyable. I read it. I finished it. I didn't DNF it, so it was definitely enjoyable. It was just silly. So I give this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next book that I finished in August is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, which I love this book, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I don't know what took me so long to visit this series. I really don't, but I'm on the Dream Thieves now. I'm listening to it on an audiobook, and I'm enjoying it a lot. I love the characters, and I love the whole world that is built, and I love what Maggie Stiefvater does with her story. I am enjoying that we're following a group of boys. I feel like we're always following like a group of girls or something like that, so this is really cool too. Raven Boys, 5 out of 5 stars. I can't wait to finish the series. Hopefully I finish it by the end of this year. It's so good. It's really so good. The book that I finished in August is A Secret History of Witches, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars to. I really loved this book, and it's funny because I looked on Goodreads and the ratings were so hot or cold about this book, and it really put me off from reading it for a really long time because, I don't know, sometimes people's ratings kind of get to you a little bit, and I wish I didn't read ratings so often as I do, because a book that wasn't highly rated is a book that I really loved. And this story follows whole generations, like hundreds of years in between, of witches, and I believe it starts in the 1700s. 1821. So it starts in 1821, and it follows generations of this family of witches that are basically, there's a curse on them. It just follows their lives, and each witch has a story. So each daughter has a story. So it changes throughout the book. Like, it's the book of Ursula, of Irene. My favorite story in this book was Morwen's story. She's my favorite witch in this. I highly recommend this book. If you love books about witches that aren't so supernatural, and it's more so about, it's kind of like practical magic, and they do, like, they use the herbs and all that stuff. This is really good, and it follows family history and what family is and what happens to the family as generations go on. So it starts in the 1800s and it all goes all the way to the 20th century of these family of witches, and I don't know, I just really love this book. I highly recommend this. This is by Louisa Morgan, and it has deckled edges. So you feel like you're reading a grimoire, which I really loved. There's definitely a lot of adult writing in this and adult concepts, and I recommend it for everybody, but if you are looking for a really good book about a history of witches, check this out. And I did read this while I was in Salem on vacation, so it really put me in the witchy spirit, so it was really cool. And the last physical book that I read in August is Wicked Like a Wildfire. This is by Lana Popovic, and this book is also about a family of witches and a curse and all that. It's like the typical witch trope. I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. I finished it rather quickly because I did enjoy it, but the plot was so confusing and I felt like there was no plot until like the very end of the book. It's a lot of lyrical writing in this, and Lana does a great job at that. I just felt like it fell flat for me story-wise. I'm hoping the second book kind of just picks up and really builds up the story a little bit more and explains a lot more of what's happening, because I just felt like this was just a big word vomit of description and not so much plot. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This wasn't what I wanted it to be. And then I read a couple of ebooks on my Nook this summer. Read Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessl. I had also read The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. I had read Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. And I had read The Lantern's Ember by Colleen Hawke. And I had also read Spell on Wheels by Kate Leith, or Leith. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her last name. The Death of Mrs. Westaway really blew me away because Ruth Ware's books were kind of repetitive for me and I wasn't really enjoying them as much, and I felt like I was starting to predict the ending of her books. But The Death of Mrs. Westaway really showed her progress in her writing and her ability to write. And I felt like it really gripped me and it was a great story. So I highly recommend that. As it's a thriller, but at the same time it's very, it reads almost like a gothic literary novel. I enjoyed the characters. I didn't feel like the main character was unlikable at all. I really liked her as a character and I liked her growth as a character. I highly recommend that book if you want a really good gothic thriller in your life. That's it. Summer of Salt, everyone knows I love that. That was a book about sisters who were witches and I just absolutely loved it. And The Lantern's Ember, it was okay. I received that on NetGalley as an ARC. The book is actually coming out in September. I want to say September 11th it's coming out. And I really thought it was going to be the perfect Halloween read. The first quarter of the book, it really started out that way. The chapters were named like Hocus Pocus and like the Headless Horseman, like all Halloween-y type vibes were coming at me when I was reading this book. Main character Jack, he is a headless horseman with a pumpkin head, and I was really starting to like picture these things in my mind. And then it took like a weird turn where it was like a love triangle with these characters. The character's name is Ember, and there are 3 men that are after her. It also takes a very strange turn into like the steampunk world with machines and robots and stuff like that. So I was just like, this is not the perfect Halloween book for me. I really thought it was gonna be like dark and in the woods and you know, pumpkins and all that stuff. It really lost the charm and I'm disappointed. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Enjoy steampunk and you are looking for a cool version of like a Halloween story in steampunk world, then check that out, but it's just not vibing with me at all. Spell on Wheels, that was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. I really enjoyed that graphic novel. I want the second one. It needs to come out soon because I need it in my life. That's all the books I think that I read in this summer. It's a lot of books. I have a huge pile over here. It's a lot. Overall, I really enjoyed everything I read this summer. No complaints here. I had a great summer. I had a great reading summer, and I hope you all did too. I am looking forward to the fall so badly. I cannot wait for cool weather. I can't wait for sweatshirts and pumpkin spice like every basic girl in this world. I can't wait for shorter days and longer nights, and yeah. If you like this video and you want to see more from me, just like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye!